Mitt Romney has erased President Barack Obama's lead in the United States election, with the candidates now tied among likely voters. The latest polls show each on 45%, with the November 6 election just 4 weeks away. Our election analyst Robert Patman is here with his views on the contest. Good evening.
Good evening, Rebecca.
Now, the first presidential debate threw up a surprise or two. Tell us about that.
Well, I think that the Obama camp may have underestimated Mr Romney because he had a dreadful September, strewn with gaffes. And going into the debates, Mr Obama looked like he was comfortable. And I think Mr Romney demonstrated once again that he is a good debater. It was a fluent, aggressive, but controlled performance and very critical of Obama's stance. And Mr Obama, well, it's very difficult to fathom why, but he didn't take advantage of some of the claims, or he didn't launch a counter-offensive against some of the claims that Mr Romney made. It was a defensive and sometimes wordy contribution from Obama, and disappointed his supporters, but delighted, of course, the Republican Party, which now believes that Mr Romney's got a bit of momentum with him.
Now, a lot of people had written off Mr Romney due to a few gaffes that he'd made. Do you think that that was premature, perhaps?
I think it probably was in retrospect. Mr Romney's always been a skilled debater. He was very good in the debates, winning the nomination against other Republican rivals for the Republican nomination. He saw off a number of the other candidates and rivals within the Republican Party. However, I think they both had different agendas. Mr Romney was hungry. He had to have a big performance. He was badly behind. Mr Obama was ahead in the polls, and he wanted to maintain his likability. I think he really didn't want to emerge from this debate coming across as haughty and triumphalist, but instead he came across as perhaps still likeable, but looking a little bit slow on his feet.
And Mr Romney's been repositioning himself, hasn't he? Is it an about-face?
I think you could describe it as an about-face. He's moved on key areas of policy. For a year he went around the United States of America saying he believed in a 20% cut in everybody's income tax, a move which would disproportionately benefit the wealthy. And he apparently abandoned that, or at least moved away from it in the debate. But you see, although it gave him an initial edge in the debate, he's now going to have to either confirm or deny this apparent policy shift. And he's also moved to the centre with regard to regulating the economy. He said he was in favour of regulation, whereas he spent a lot of the last year saying how he wanted to strip away the Wall Street regulations that were introduced after the financial crash. And he's also presented himself as a strong foreign policy leader, which is another bid to get into the centre. What's
been the response from the Obama camp on that?
I think twofold. I think, first of all, they're stressing the record that Mr Obama inherited the worst financial crisis since the late 20s, which was caused by a Republican administration, policies which, of course, they're comparing with Mr Romney. They're saying that Mr Romney favours tax cuts and also beefing up the military by borrowing. Of course, Mr Romney denies that. But the second thrust is they're now targeting what they see as the vulnerabilities of Mr Romney. And I don't think Mr Romney can get away during the next two debates without spelling out his new policies.
What do you think are Barack Obama's weaknesses so far?
I think he was a bit professorial, if you know what I mean. I mean, I shouldn't say it's about my own profession, but he came across as a bit constrained and almost pedantic at times. And I think people wanted him to have a bit more fire in his belly. He came across as someone who was a good technician, but strangely, he didn't. When his supporters expected he would go for the jugular, he didn't. And I think it's a tactical thing. I think Mr Obama wanted. It wasn't a disaster for Mr Obama, but it was a major disappointment. However, I think we will see him go up a gear in the second and third debates. It's a bit like, I think the Obama camp saw this as a prolonged struggle rather than one-off struggle, and I think they'll be looking, just as the fighter who wins the first round in a boxing contest doesn't always prevail, they'll be looking to come back strongly. And I think Mr Obama will, to use the boxing metaphor, take his gloves off in the second and third debates.
Professor Robert Patman from the University of Otago, thanks for your time.